Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to AMC Mailbag, the all-mailbag show here on AMC Movie News, where all we do is take your mailbag questions. My name is John Campy. I am the editor-in-chief of AMC Movie News, and I'm so glad you decided to join us for this Sunday. What is it, October 12th? I believe it is, yeah. I can't believe the month is already like halfway over. And this is a show where all we do is take your mailbag questions, a much more laid-back, relaxed. You know, we take our time here, we talk a little bit of behind the scenes, and we take all your movie questions as well. This was an interesting weekend at the theaters, actually. I've had a bunch of you guys writing in asking me about the movies that have opened up this week. And of course, those are Alexander and the Horrible, No Good, Rotten title. That's a terrible title for a movie. And yes, I know it's based on the book of the same title. I get it. But that doesn't change the fact that it is a stupid title for a movie. Lots of movies based on books change their names because, you know, it's something better. But the Steve Carell, Jennifer Garner, Alexander, and I don't know, the Horrible, No Good, Rotten Day. Let's just go with that. There's that. There's the new Luke Evans film, Dracula. And, of course, the new Robert Duvall and Robert Downey Jr. film, The Judge. And oddly enough, I think my favorite movie this weekend, and if you had told me that this is what I was going to say a month ago, I would have said you were crazy. But I think is the Alexander movie. I just found myself grinning the entire film. Now, I did not have huge belly laughs running throughout the film, although there was one or two really good spots. But I just found it to be really cute, really charming, and I found myself grinning from ear to ear through most of the film. It is a harmless, sweet enough, innocent enough movie that was just under an hour and a half. It was a pretty short movie too, of just a good time at the movies. And, you know, I wasn't blown away by it, but I thought this looked like just a throwaway piece of garbage film. And I find myself being, thinking about it and smiling still. So it actually has some pretty nice entertainment value to it. The other one was Dracula, Luke Evans. I'm a big fan of Luke Evans. I continue to be a big fan of Luke Evans, even when he appears in bad films. Like that horrible Three Musketeers film he did 2 or 3 years ago. Not a lot of people liked Immortals, even though I got a kick out of it, but I know a lot of people didn't like it. I still think he represents himself well when he's in any of these movies. And I thought this Dracula film had some pretty interesting approaches to their story. They took some liberties, obviously, with mythology. But I thought the way they executed some of the stuff, particularly the action, was very creative and innovative. But it's also just the dialogue in the film is quite bad. It's quite poor. It's kind of distracting. And I know a lot of people hate this movie. But I'm going to tell you, I walked out not hating it. I wasn't thrilled with it at the same time, but I walked out going, I'm glad I saw it. I don't know that I'd recommend it to people, but I'm glad that I saw it. And I think there's an audience out there for it, and maybe you're one of them. The other one that I had really high expectations for, and I think most of us did, was the new Robert Downey Jr. film, The Judge, which he also produced through his new production company. And I've been hearing really mixed things. I was late to the party for it because I didn't go to the, press junkets. I don't go to a lot of the press screenings anymore because usually press screenings are reserved for the people who are going to go and do the interviews at the press junkets. And frankly, I don't cover much of those anymore. I let everybody else on the staff do that. So I haven't seen The Judge up until yesterday. And my expectations have been lowered because the reviews have been very, very mixed. So I didn't know what we were going to get out of this film. And I got to tell you, I think there are parts of this movie that are completely brilliant. Completely brilliant. There's a few scenes in this movie that if there was an Oscar for best scene, there's one or two in this film that would be nominated for that. There's one in particular, this is no spoiler, but if those of you who've seen the film, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's this one scene in particular where Robert Duvall meets his granddaughter, Robert Downey Jr.'s daughter, for the first time. It was so beautifully done and so masterfully acted by Robert Duvall. I just feel like when I say his name, it's almost like an instant reaction that I feel like I should say Sir Robert Duvall. I don't know why, but the scene is just performed to absolute perfection by Robert Duvall, and it moved me. It really, really did. And I think there are some great things about this movie. It is not a courtroom drama film. It's not. This is a film about a dude with really horrible family past and trying to reconcile, especially issues of fathers and sons. And almost all men that I know, we struggle on one level or another with father and son issues. And I think they touched on them beautifully. The film gets weighted down, though. It's too long. They have a number of scenes that are just repetitive. Like, okay, you already communicated. The point of this scene, you've already communicated in one or two other scenes already. They delved into some unnecessary stuff. There was one really bad character in it that just felt completely out of place. And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But, still, despite the fact that I think a lot of its brilliance is weighed down and kind of covered over by excess, like excess of everything, I still found it to be a really good film. And I enjoyed it a lot, but you can see how and why it's getting mixed reactions from some people, and how it could have been a hell of a lot better had they been a little bit more frugal, had they understood that they can cut this and they can cut that, and if you tighten this up and remove this character and focus on the strengths of the film, I think it could have been, honestly, I feel like this is a film that could have been an Oscar contender. In the hands of a different editor, I feel like this is a movie that could have been an Oscar contender. As it stands, it's not. But I don't have as mixed feelings about it as a lot of other people do. I walked out having enjoyed it. I know Dennis Zane, he went with me, and I know he actually quite liked it quite a bit. So, yeah, I gotta say, I didn't walk out hating any of the films this weekend. I quite enjoyed the Alexander film. I think there are things about Dracula to enjoy if you want to go check it out. And I think overall The Judge is a pretty good movie, but it's hindered by the fact that you could tell it could have been brilliant. So anyway, that was my weekend at the movies. I'd be curious to hear what you saw this weekend. Jump into the comments section and just tell me what movies you saw this weekend and what you thought about them, the good things about them, the bad things about them, all that kind of stuff. That'd be cool to hear. Well, anyway, folks, this is Mailbag, so let's get to your mailbag questions today. And the first question today comes to us from James Walsh, who writes, "Hello, AMC, and thank you for the great job you do." Well, thanks so much, James. I appreciate that. "You recently took a viewer question about a Phantom reboot. It got me thinking about Billy Zane and could not but wonder, why did he not become a big star? He had a massive role in Titanic, and I thought that maybe, like Leo and Kate, could have found success off the back of that movie, but he did not. The only other major role he had was The Phantom, and that was too campy to be taken seriously and bombed badly." Listen, James, you're not the only person who has wondered about, what could have been with Billy Zane. Billy Zane, I think, is one of these guys who actually has a lot of talent. I think he's a good actor. And don't forget, he was big enough that he popped up in Zoolander. Remember that at the dance-off? It's like, "You should listen to your friend Billy Zane. He's a cool guy." I mean, that was such a great cameo that he did. And of course, Zoolander yelling at him, "Zip it, Zane," or whatever he says to him. It was pretty funny. Anyway, but yeah, it's really weird because nowadays, he's just not in anything except these straight to VOD B movies. Like, I think the biggest film he's been in lately was Scorpion King Search for Redemption, or Scorpion King Battle for Redemption. That's it. Billy Zane and Scorpion King Battle for Redemption. I mean, it's just not where you would have expected this guy, Billy Zane, who was probably the third biggest star of Titanic. Obviously, you have Leo, obviously you have Kate, but after them, it's pretty much Billy Zane. And you'd think that coming off of that, he would have been able to propel into something bigger. I think he had the talent for it. So I'm a little bit at a loss as to why. So yeah, man, you're not the only one to think about that. Anyway, let's move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Sean Will. And Sean Will writes, "Like John, I absolutely loved Man of Steel and will defend it to the end. That being said, I had one major criticism of the movie. The destruction and devastation of Metropolis took me out of the movie because of how over the top it was and just how costly that destruction would really be. It seems that the destruction of Metropolis will be the focal point of Batman v Superman and will act as the plot device to bring Batman/Lex into the universe. Do you think Warner Brothers and Zack Snyder always had this as their plan, or do you think it was more a reactionary decision based on the criticism that Man of Steel faced? It's a great question, Sean, and let me address the one part of your question first. And I know I've addressed this before on AMC Movie Talk, but I think it bears repeating. I'm the type of guy that I can like something, and if somebody else doesn't like that something, I can go, okay, I can see why you didn't like that, but I still do, no matter, like, even though you think something different, but that's cool. I can see why you think that way. Like The Judge, I can totally see, even though I like the film, I can see why other people have mixed feelings about it. Dracula, even though I didn't feel like Dracula was terrible, I can see why some people would. But one of the things I've never gotten about the criticism for Man of Steel, which I still believe was a fabulous film. I just think it's a great movie. The two criticisms that always came out of it, though, that I never understood people's logic, and I always felt like they were just reaching for something to complain about. Number one was that he killed Zod, and we have firmly established why that was not a problem. We've made videos about it. You can go back and look at the videos we've made, but Batman killing Zod was not a problem. It was not an issue. It was the logical thing for the movie to do, and consistent with the character of Superman. But that's not what we're talking about. The other part was the destruction of Metropolis. And I have never had an issue with the destruction. And remember, it wasn't all of Metropolis. It was like a third of downtown, which is still a lot. Still a lot. And I no doubt when you look at the destruction of Metropolis in Man of Steel, you think, man, probably thousands of people lost their lives. Absolutely. But let's keep in mind the circumstances. Superman, some people criticize Superman for, I've never understood this, criticize Superman for the destruction of Metropolis. Superman was facing an army of gods. And he had only really been Superman for like 24 hours. Like, he's always been strong and all that, but he really only came into his power like 24 hours before that. And he was faced with a group of Kryptonians who have been military for the past 30 years, including a general. And their main goal was the extermination of humanity. So here comes this army of gods, and their one goal is to exterminate all of humanity. That's the only thing they're here to do, is wipe every last human being out. And Superman somehow manages to stop them. And the collateral damage is 1/3 of one downtown. And a couple thousand people died, and that's terrible, but that's not Superman's fault. That's the army of gods coming to fight and taking the fight there. It's just, I've never understood it. And you know, a lot of times too, a lot of Marvel fanboys will like point at the destruction of Metropolis. And it's like, well, excuse me, how much of New York got wrecked? How many buildings got demolished in this battle with the invading Chitauri army? And I'm sorry, but just one of those Kryptonians could have wiped out that entire Chitauri army like that. Chitauri, whatever. Could have wiped them out like that. General Zod by himself could have taken that whole army coming through that wormhole and blown them all away. And now you've got an army of those General Zods are the ones trying to destroy the city. And like, but Marvel fanboys, and hey, look, I'm a Marvel fanboy too, but Marvel fanboys often forget that. This is like, well, look at how much destruction happened in New York. Yeah, well, that was an alien army. Yeah, well, that alien army would have had their asses kicked by the alien army that Superman had to fight. So don't compare those things. Those are two totally different things. But let's get on to the heart of your question. The heart of your question, and don't get me wrong, with Man of Steel, those are the two things I just can't understand people complaining about. I just don't get that. There are other things about Man of Steel that I hear other people criticize, and while I don't agree, I can go, okay, I can see why you'd feel that way. I can see why it didn't work for you and whatever, totally. But yeah, those two things, man, the Superman having to kill Zod and the destruction of Metropolis, I don't understand the logic behind those complaints. But that's just me. But on to the other part of your question. I completely agree with you. And I think Zack Snyder has pretty much confirmed what it is you're saying, that the thing that's going to bring Batman into the picture, and probably what's going to pit Batman against Superman, and what brings Lex Luthor really into the picture in the next movie, is probably the catalyst of all that destruction in Metropolis. That Superman is now going to be looked at by a lot of people as a hero, but there's going to be another chunk of people that are looking at him as an alien threat. And what type of damage could this guy do to our planet? And I think that's what's going to bring these guys into it. And of course, the catalyst is going to be the rebuilding of Metropolis, all that kind of stuff. Now, you ask the question, do I think that this was always Warner Brothers and Zack Snyder's plan? Or was this just a reaction to the negative reaction some fans had about the destruction of Metropolis in the movies? I got to tell you, I totally believe this was always the plan. As a matter of fact, I remember David Goyer shortly after the movie was released, it was still very much in theaters. It had only been out for a week or two. And I believe remembering David Goyer making some comments about how the events near the end of Man of Steel, which we can only assume was the destruction of Metropolis, are going to have a heavy, heavy influence on where we go with regards to do people trust Superman and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I believe that it was always their plan to explore the fallout of what happened in Metropolis and what goes on from there, including how they introduced Batman and Lex Luthor. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question today comes from Gustav Bonsel, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but I think I might have got that one right. Anyway, dear John and crew, do you think any of the comic book-based movies could get an Oscar nomination in any of the big categories? Best Actors, Director, Movie, Screenplay this year? I think X-Men Days of Future Past may have a shot in the Best Movie category if there are 9 nominations in total. Good question, Gustav. And you know what? This is going to be one of those years where there's going to be some serious arguments that can be made for a comic book movie getting the big nomination. And by big nomination, I mean Best Picture. I don't think there is anybody from any of this year's crop of comic book movies that will stand a chance to get an acting nomination. I mean, a lot of people will point to the James McAvoy's role in X-Men Days of Future Past as Charles Xavier, and that's completely understandable. But as the year progresses, we're seeing some really, really heavy hitters that are coming down. There are only going to be 5 Best Actor nominations. And it looks like Benedict Cumberbatch is going to have one of those nominations completely sewn up. It looks like Michael Keaton is going to have one of those roles 100% completely sewn up. There are a number of performances coming down the pipe that I think that is becoming a very crowded category that I don't think James McAvoy is going to fit into. And he probably, out of all the comic book actors this year, I think probably has the best chance, but I don't think he does. I think, though, that an argument can be made that X-Men Days of Future Past may, if there are 7, 8, 9, or 10 nominees for Best Picture this year, I believe there's actually an outside shot for X-Men Days of Future Past. Now, there are outside shots, I believe, for 3 films. One is Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy has a critic rating, not an audience rating, a critic rating of 91%. Captain America, I also believe, has an outside dark horse chance of getting a nomination. Captain America, the Winter Soldier, has a ridiculously low, I mean, this sounds like a big number, but it should have been higher. A critic rating, once again, not audience, these are the critics, at an 89%. X-Men Days of Future Past, the last time I checked, it might have gone up 1 or 2, or might have gone down 1 or 2, but the last time I checked, X-Men Days of Future Past has a critic rating of 94%. These are amongst the highest critically rated films of the year, and these are 3 comic book movies. 3 comic book movies amongst the highest rated wide release films of the year. So I believe they all have a outside dark horse chance, but I believe X-Men Days of Future Past isn't just an outside dark horse chance. I believe it has a chance. If there are just 5 nominees this year, that chance dwindles. But if the ballots turn out that we get 7, 8, 9, or possibly 10 nominees this year, you know what? I'm going to say there's a solid 50-50 chance that X-Men Days of Future Past may get one of those nominations. I won't be surprised by that, so don't keel over. That is the great thing about this era of comic book movies. They are getting better and better and better. And not just better in one area of comic book. They're not just becoming better comic book movies. What we've seen, especially this year, and going back all the way to like the original X-Men or Dark Knight and things like that, is that comic book movies are becoming better movies in general. Not just better comic book movies, but these DC and Marvel characters are delivering higher quality movies and not just comic book movies. You know what I'm saying? And that's why you get, these stuffy movie critics are giving X-Men Days of Future Past like 94%, Guardians of the Galaxy 91%. This is a great age for comic book movies. I do believe that these three films, Outside Shot, X-Men Days of Future Past, is the one that probably has the best chance out of all of them. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Robert. And Robert writes, when you rate a movie from 1 to 10, does that scale include only similar movies or all movies? For example, if you gave a horror movie a 9, does that mean it is one of the best horror movies? Or is it as good as The Godfather? Do you think the average critic agrees with your way of rating movies? It's a great question, Robert. And before I get into my personal answer for that, once again, I got to repeat my overall holy mantra for all films. All film is subjective. There is no such thing as an objectively good or an objectively bad movie. There just isn't. They don't exist. Because unless something is quantifiable, meaning it can be measured, it can actually be measured with empirical, non-opinion-based things, like the height of that light in the corner. That can be measured. In an empirical way, it can be measured. The height is 7 feet, 3.5 inches. That is objective. That's not subjective. That's not how I feel about the height of the light. That is the objective measurement. How fast does that sprinter run? Well, that can be measured. There's a non-refutable way to measure it. You start the stopwatch when he starts running. You stop the stopwatch when he crosses the finish line. Whatever that watch says, that's irrefutable. It's not subjective. It's not based on opinion. It is this time. It took him 11 seconds, 11.215 seconds. That's objective. That's data. That's based on objective, measurable, quantifiable data. All right? And if you can't quantifiably measure something with hard data, then it is, by definition, subjective. It's kind of based on opinion and where we go. And that is the most beautiful thing about movies, is the pure subjectivity of it. Like we can all, including me, we can say, that movie's awesome and that movie's bad. What we're really saying is, in my opinion, my experience is that movie's awesome, and in my opinion and in my experience, that movie's bad. I can say, you're crazy for not liking that movie. But what I'm really saying is, hey, okay, you didn't like it. That's cool. It's so outside of my experience of that movie that I just can't get it. But fine, whatever. But we'll use terminology like, you're crazy for not liking it. People tell me they don't like Star Wars. You're crazy. Anyway, so how we then judge movies or review movies, whatever, is just as subject to that whole notion of subjectivity, right? We're all going to judge movies on different basis. And for me, since there's no measurable criteria for a movie, I kind of end up scoring movies purely based out of what was my movie-going experience. Me sitting in that theater, what type of experience did this movie give me while I was there? And lots of different things can go into that experience. And all experiences are subjective. But laughs can be part of the experience. Thrills can be part of the experience. Sadness can be part of the experience. Love is part of the experience. Romance can be part of the experience. Intrigue, mystery, horror, fear, all these different things go into delivering what is hopefully a positive experience for us at the movie theaters. So when I personally, but remember, this is just me, when I personally rate a movie, what I'm really doing is basing it on what was my overall experience like when I came out. I don't judge one movie against others of its genre or against other films outside of their genre. I try to just judge a movie based just alone on that movie itself. And what kind of an experience did it give me? So like for me, I can't remember exactly what I gave Avengers, but I either gave the Avengers like a 9.5 or a 10. One of the two when I saw it. Now that's not to say that, that it was the best, most well-rounded movie of all time. Are there other movies that are more well-rounded? Absolutely. But it did what it did so well that it gave me one of the best experiences I have ever had in a movie theater. And one of the things you can't argue is my experience. My experience was unique to me. And all I can tell you, whether you agree with it or disagree, and whether your experience was similar or different than mine, what you can't argue with was that I did get chills in the movie theater watching it. I laughed and felt excited and felt my body jumping up and down. I was so just enthralled with the film that it gave me that experience. Now, that doesn't mean that's the experience you're going to have, and that's totally fine if it's not. We don't have to have the same experience. None of us will have the same experience. But for me, I kind of take what was my experience in this film, and then I give it a scale on 1 to 10, and for me, if I give a movie a 6, that means I liked it. It's a decent movie. I liked it. 7, hey, that's a good movie, man. 8, this is a really good movie. 9, oh my God. The only thing I don't like about, a lot of people who rate movies 1 to 10, whatever, is it seems like anybody who just likes a movie these days, minimum they want to give a movie is 8.5. And anything lower than an 8.5 means you hated it. And it's kind of crazy. I just don't understand that. So I'll give a movie 6.5 or something like that, right? And then I'll have people emailing me going, well, John, you said you liked the movie. How can you give it 6.5? Because 6.5 out of 10 that's all right. That's pretty good. That's 6.5 out of 10. That's pretty good. But some people, I swear, today we live in an age where somebody even just likes a movie. It's 10, 10, 10. Everything's a 10. Everything's a 10. And I think that devalues the meaning of a 10, but I've done that speech before. And now, do I think other critics agree with my system of rating films? Well, it depends. It's all subjective. I mean, I think there are a lot of critics who judge the way I do. I think there are a lot of critics who don't. So, I mean, and that's why I always try to tell people, don't ever just bunch critics all together and say, oh, critics don't like this type of movie. Well, you don't know what you're talking about. Because critics are a very diverse group that very rarely agree on anything. Like, for instance, take The Judge, for example, right? I think it's got like a 52, 53, 54%. I'm not really sure. It's around the 50% mark anyway. That means half the critics like it, half the critics don't. So there's no agreement here. Never lump just the critics together because that's not how film critics work. We're all vastly different types of people with vastly different types of tastes and vastly different types of experiences we have going into movies. So don't ever, kind of ball them all together. So to answer your question, I think some agree with me and some disagree with me, and that's probably the way it should be. All right, let's move on to the next question today. And the next question today comes to us from Terrius, who writes, hey AMC, my friend and I had a debate about the upcoming Avatar sequels, and she was saying that they started production over a year ago, but the films still won't be released till about 2017. She stated that it's taking so long because of all the CGI work, but I said there are many other factors at play. Please settle this debate, guys, and bring on the filthy. Well, I'm not completely clear about what it is you're debating, but I will tell you this. The film has not started production yet. Now they're going to be shooting the next 3 films back to back to back. So they're going to shoot all the next 3 films all at once. So it's going to take them a long time to shoot. But I can tell you that your friend is wrong. They did not begin production last year. They're in a series of stage of pre-production, but shooting of the film has not yet begun. Also, the first film doesn't come out in 2017. The first film comes out in 2016. The next one comes out in 2017, and the final one comes out in 2018. So I don't know if that's exactly what your debate was or what you guys were arguing about, but if I understand your question right, no, production on the film has not yet begun. They have not gone in front of the cameras. Now remember, there are 3 stages of making a movie: pre-production, production, and post-production. Pre-production is almost everything that goes on prior to them actually getting together on set and start rolling cameras. So that's, writing the script technically is pre-production. Starting character designs is pre-production. Getting your crew together is pre-production. Scouting locations is pre-production. All this stuff that goes into making a movie before you ever get in front of the cameras and start rolling, that's pre-production. And yes, there has been some pre-production, probably a bunch of pre-production on the new Avatar films. However, if you're asking me, did they start production last year? The answer to that is no. They have not gotten in front of the cameras yet. So that part is still to come. And no, the movie does not open in 2017. It opens in 2016. So I hope that's helpful. All right, let's move on to the next question today. And the next question today comes to us from Davian Rivera, who writes, with the Fantastic Four coming out in less than a year, I find it really odd that Fox has yet to release any official pictures, teasers, or even some concept art. They had an opportunity to convince haters during Comic-Con and completely missed it. Most superhero movies like Avengers, Age of Ultron, and Batman v Superman release something at least a year or two ahead of their release date. Why do you guys think Fox is waiting this long to release anything, and will their last-minute marketing strategy hurt the reboot at the box office? Well, we talk about trailers and when first trailers come out and stuff like that. I got to tell you, man, this last-minute strategy, we are nowhere near the last minute. We're nowhere near the last minute. We're like 9 months away from Fantastic Four coming out. That's still forever. And really, we haven't really gotten anything from Avengers yet either. They showed a little sizzler at Comic-Con, but they didn't even put that online yet. A couple of still images in Entertainment Weekly came out, but we really speaking, tangibly, we haven't really gotten anything out of the film yet. And that comes out months before Fantastic Four does. Batman v Superman, there was this little sizzler that they gave at thing, but that was just one quick glimpse of something. We haven't really gotten anything. So there are no trailers yet for those films either. And I got to tell you right now, putting out something now is not going to help Fantastic Four. It's just not. Now, you're talking about last minute. Look at this one movie coming out that looks fantastic. The new Keanu Reeves film, John Wick. This movie looks awesome. One of my favorite trailers of the year. I've been super excited about it. But its first trailer only came out a few weeks ago, and the movie's opening in a couple of weeks. So there was about 5 weeks before the movie opened did they put out the first trailer, posters, character posters, all that kind of stuff, because they're timing their marketing push. If they had put out a trailer for it 8 months ago, I don't think it would have helped the film at all. Not this particular film at any rate. So John Wick is last minute. Fantastic Four is not last minute. Look, if we get to within 3 months of Fantastic Four opening and there's still no trailers, then I'd say, okay, now we're starting to get a little bit last minute for a big major film like Fantastic Four. But honestly, for me, I believe we are months and months away from that. I believe we are months and months and months and months away from having to worry about things like that. So I think they're okay. I don't think there's anything to worry about or for us to be nervous about at this point. Let's give it a lot more time. All right, we go on to the final question of the day. And the last question today comes to us from Kevin Carney, who writes, greetings and salutations, AMC. Big fan of the show. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. What do you make of the recent comments made by Harry Lennox when he suggested that Ben Affleck has a chance to be a better Batman than Christian Bale simply because Affleck is an American and Bale is British? Isn't this extremely hypocritical coming from an actor who was in a film where Superman, one of the biggest icons of American popular culture, is played by a Brit? Thanks, and bring on the filthy. Well, thanks a lot for the question, Kevin. First of all, I want to address this. You use the word hypocritical. Hypocritical and hypocrite and all those kind of things right now is one of the most misused words in the online forums, okay? It really, really is. I think you need to understand what hypocritical means and hypocrite means. There was nothing about what, maybe a little contradictory, but not hypocritical. Hypocritical is when you preach something and then go and act in a completely different way. Yeah, Henry Lennox was in a movie where there was a Brit playing Superman. He was in a movie where a Brit was playing Superman. But that's not like he's going around saying, only Brits should play superhero characters. Only Brits, and gets on talk shows and talks about how only people from Europe should play American superheroes. It's stupid if non-Europeans play superheroes. And he goes and he preaches and preaches and preaches that. And then he's going to be in a movie with an American playing Batman. And then he goes, oh, no, this is great that an American's playing Batman. That's hypocritical. It's not being a little bit contradictory or seemingly there seems to be some contradictions. That's not what hypocrisy is. So I just want to get that out of the way, okay? But that doesn't mean it says, hey, wait a minute. How can Lennox say that? That, and let's be clear here. He did not say that that he has a chance to be a better Batman than Christian Bale simply because he's American. That's not what he said. What Lennox said was that he believes that Affleck has a head start on what Christian Bale does because he's American. And, Batman is an American character. As an American actor, he'll already have a head start in understanding the nuances of the performance that are going to be needed for this, millionaire playboy American dude. Well, and I guess in the modern age, he's a billionaire. Of the billionaire playboy dude, that gives him a head start. That doesn't say that only an American can play Batman. That's not what Lennox was saying. Nor was he taking anything away from Christian Bale. Remember, he said Christian Bale was an amazing Batman. He's just saying it kind of gives him a bit of a head start. And I see nothing wrong with him suggesting that. I believe that an American actor, you all know how I feel about the role that's, of Superman, right? I thought he was a brilliant Superman. Absolutely brilliant. Cavill was a great Superman. I think the best Superman we've ever had. But would an American actor have had a little bit of a head start on Henry Cavill being an American? Yeah, probably a little bit of a head start, but I still think Cavill finishes ahead because it's not how you start, it's how you finish, right? But I don't think there's anything wrong with suggesting, look, I'm totally for straight actors playing gay characters. No problem with that. No problem with a gay character playing a straight character or a gay actor playing a straight character. Doesn't matter to me. But even though I have no problem with that, and they can both turn out to be equally great, I think if you have a significant gay character in a film, I think if you've got two actors up for the role, and one is a gay actor, I think it's fair to say that gay actor is going to have a little bit of a head start in fully understanding, embracing, and portraying who the character is. Now, that doesn't mean that the non-gay actor can't embrace that really quickly and catch up and maybe even surpass the gay actor. True, but it still doesn't change the fact that the gay actor has a little bit of an advantage to start with. A little bit of an advantage. I think if you're making a movie about, gang violence in the inner city and stuff like that, I think if you had an actor who kind of grew up in that environment a little bit, that gives that actor a little bit of a head start. But, another actor who grew up in, Paris, that doesn't mean that actor can't catch up and even surpass that other guy. But it doesn't change the fact that that other guy, it does have a little bit of a head start because they already understand that environment a little bit. So it's not the be all and end all. And Lennox wasn't saying Christian Bale won't be as good of a Batman as Ben Affleck will because Ben Affleck is American. That's not what Lennox was saying. He was simply saying that Affleck actually has a little bit of an advantage over Christian Bale to start because as an American, he might grasp some of the nuances a little quicker than Bale did. That doesn't mean he will be as good as Bale. That doesn't mean he'll be better than Bale. That doesn't mean he'll be worse than Bale. It's simply stating a fact that, hey, to start off with, he's going to have a bit of an advantage. And I don't think there's anything wrong with pointing that out because it's true. It's the truth. So I don't believe it's hypocritical or even really contradictory all that much for him to point it out. And once again, I know I already said it, but this is important. Lennox wasn't saying Ben Affleck will be a better Batman than Christian Bale. He wasn't saying that at all. The jury is still out on that. We got to wait a long time. And he doesn't even have to. Look, Bale was so good as Batman. Affleck doesn't even need to be as good as Bale was to be awesome. He can do Batman 90% as good as Bale did. And remember, this is going to be apples to oranges because Affleck is going to be playing a much different Batman than Christian Bale was. But still, even if this is how good Christian Bale was, if Ben Affleck is even 90% as good as Christian Bale was, he's going to be an awesome Batman. But who knows? Maybe he'll be a better Batman. We'll have to wait and see. All right, folks, that'll do it for me for this installment of AMC Mailbag. Thanks so much for joining me. Listen, don't forget, if you've got a topic or a question you'd like seen addressed on AMC Mailbag or on AMC Movie Talk during the week, email us anytime at amcmovietalk@gmail.com. And maybe, just maybe, you'll see your question used on the air. Also, don't forget, lots of great films playing in AMC theaters right now. Head on over to www.amctheaters.com for your theater, showtime, and of course, your movie ticket information. And don't forget, guys, you can follow me on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, whatever. Just follow me on the various social media networks, just at John Campia. I make a lot of announcements about AMC Movie News actually in advance to people who follow me on social media, so you might want to follow me there. So that'll do it for me, folks. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm going to enjoy Disneyland and a little bit of football today. It's going to be a good final day of the weekend for me. I hope you have an equally enjoyable one, even if you're doing something different. So my name's John Campia for AMC Movie News, and until next time, guys, bye-bye.